I still remember the sound of the gavel echoing through that cold courtroom. The judge's voice, sharp and merciless, sentenced me to 5 years behind bars. My knees trembled. My hands were ice. I glanced at my brother sitting there, looking, down, pretending to be sad. But behind that fake sadness was the face of the man who just destroyed my life, the man who lied under oath. I grew up believing blood was thicker than water. We shared birthdays, secrets, and childhood dreams. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment he raised his hand and swore to tell the truth. What came next shattered my soul. He pointed at me, accusing me of something I never did. Fraud, theft, crimes I didn't commit. But someone had to take the fall. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg the judge to see the truth. But my lawyer was powerless against a mountain of fabricated evidence. Evidence my own brother helped to create. And you know what's worse? No one doubted him. Not the jury. Not the judge. Because who would think a brother could do this? They believed every word. As they cuffed my hands, my eyes burned with betrayal. I kept searching his face for answers, for a flicker of guilt. But no. He avoided my gaze, acting like a victim himself. Meanwhile, my world collapsed. My job, gone. My house, gone. My reputation, destroyed in a matter of hours. All thanks to the person I trusted the most. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who shares your own blood? Someone you would have died for? If yes, then you know this kind of pain doesn't just break you. It changes you. It forges something inside. Because prison wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. The first night in prison felt like falling into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The metal door slammed behind me, and suddenly, I wasn't someone's sister, daughter, or friend. I was just inmate, Nucker 46712, alone, terrified, staring at a concrete wall, wondering how my own brother could sleep after what he did. But little did he know. He didn't bury me. He planted me. Every day inside was a fight to stay sane, a fight to survive, and a fight to hold on to. The truth. While others adjusted to the chaos of prison life, I refused. I refused to let the system crush me. I started learning, studying, reading every legal book I could get my hands on. If no one would fight for me, then I'd fight for myself. Do you know what's funny? Prison teaches you 2 things real quick: who you are and who you'll never be again. I realized I'd spent my whole life being the good sister, the one who sacrificed, who forgave, who stayed quiet. But that version of me? She died the day my brother looked me in the eyes and lied to the world. Months turned into years, but every day sharpened my resolve. I gathered every document, every piece of my case file. I wrote letters, filed motions. And somewhere along that journey, I found something. A mistake. A crack in his story. Something so small, yet powerful enough to reopen the door to freedom, and maybe even justice. So let me ask you, have you ever realized that the person who tried to destroy you actually gave you the fire to become unstoppable? Because when the day finally came, the day I walked out of that prison, I wasn't just free. I was armed with the truth, and with a lawsuit that would tear his perfect little life apart. The day I stepped out of prison, the air felt heavier than I remembered. People walked past me like I was invisible, like I didn't exist. My name was dirt. My reputation was ashes. But deep inside, I wasn't broken. I was reborn. And I made myself a promise right there on that sidewalk. I will make him regret every single lie. The first thing I did was track down the only person who had ever believed me, Ms. Patel, an old neighbor and retired paralegal. She opened her door, saw me, and her eyes welled with tears. "I knew you were innocent," she whispered. Her kitchen became my war room. We spread out papers, case files, photos. Somewhere in there, the truth was hiding, and I was going to find it. Days turned into weeks. I barely slept. I reviewed every transcript from the trial, every bank record, every phone log. Then, there it was. A signature. A timestamp. Something. My brother never expected anyone to notice. Proof that he had forged documents and shifted money. Not to me, but to himself. It was subtle, but it was enough. My hands trembled as I held the paper. This was the key, the weapon. I felt a mix of rage and relief, but there was no time to celebrate, because proving my innocence wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted justice. I wanted him to feel the same fear I felt when the prison door closed, behind me. Let me ask you, what would you do if the person who destroyed your life was still out there smiling, living free, pretending to be the perfect son, the perfect businessman? Would you forgive? Or would you do what I did and come back swinging? I hired the best civil attorney I could afford, or rather the only one willing to be paid after we won. His name was David Rios, sharp, ruthless, the kind of man who smelled blood from a mile away. When I showed him the evidence, his grin was wicked. "Oh, this is going to be fun." For the first time in years, I felt hope. We filed the lawsuit within days. Fraud, defamation, malicious prosecution, emotional distress. Every charge was a blade aimed straight at my brother's empire. His fake little world built on lies was about to come crashing down. The news spread fast. Local papers picked it up. Wrongfully convicted woman sues her own brother. And guess what? People love a redemption story. At first, my brother acted unbothered, arrogant, dismissive, sent me a text, "You're embarrassing yourself." But I ignored it, because deep down, he was sweating. I knew him. I knew every twitch, every tell. And when his lawyer called mine, asking for a private settlement, that's when I knew. He was terrified, but I refused to settle. No amount of money would erase the years he stole from me. I wanted the truth exposed. I wanted the world to see him. Not as the golden boy everyone admired, but as the snake he truly was. And when the court date arrived, I walked into that room with my head high. No cuffs, no fear. This time, I was the one holding the truth. Tell me something. Have you ever imagined what it feels like to look your enemy in the eyes, the same person who tried to bury you, and smile, knowing their world is about to burn? Because that's exactly how I felt. As the judge said, "Court is now in session." The courtroom was packed. Journalists, spectators. Even former friends who once abandoned me now sat, pretending they always believed me. My brother walked in, dressed in his expensive tailored suit, hiding behind fake confidence. But his eyes, they betrayed him. He didn't expect me to come back stronger. He never thought I'd survive prison, let alone fight back. When the opening statements began, my lawyer wasted no time. "Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just a case of betrayal. It's a case of calculated destruction. A brother who weaponized the justice system to ruin his own sister, for money." The jury stared, stunned. Some shook their heads. Some glanced at my brother with pure disgust. Then came the evidence. Bank records showing the money trail leading to his secret account. Emails he thought were deleted, recovered. Text messages with accomplices. laughing about how she'll never see this coming. Each piece was a nail in the coffin, and with every document, I watched his face melt from arrogance to panic. My lawyer then called him to the stand. The room went silent. He shifted in his seat, adjusted his tie, and tried to play the innocent card. "I did what I thought was right," he mumbled. But David, my lawyer, was a shark. "Really? You thought forging documents and lying under oath was the right thing?" His voice echoed. My brother stammered, sweating bullets. "Let me ask you, have you ever witnessed someone realize, in real time, that their lies are collapsing and there's no way out? Their hands tremble, their throat dries, their eyes dart around, searching for an escape that doesn't exist. That's exactly what I saw that day. And I promise you, it was the sweetest thing I've ever seen." The cross-examination was brutal. David dismantled him piece by piece. Every lie he told in the past unraveled under the weight of the truth. At one point, my brother snapped. "She deserved it. She always acted like she was better than me." Gasps filled the room. The mask had fallen. For the first time, everyone saw the real him. The judge banged his gavel. "Order in the court!" But the damage was done. The jury had heard it. His confession wasn't just a slip. It was his true face slipping out of the facade. Suddenly, it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about pride, jealousy, hatred disguised as family love. And now, the world could see it. The prosecution rested. And when my turn came, I stood up, took a deep breath, walked to the stand, and looked straight into the eyes of every person who once doubted me. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I told them everything, from the first lie to the prison door closing behind me, to the day I found the truth. Tears streamed down the faces of some jurors. Others sat in stunned silence. I could see them thinking, what if this was me? What if someone I trusted did this to me? And that's when I realized this wasn't just my fight. I was standing there for everyone who had ever been betrayed. For everyone who ever had their life destroyed by someone they trusted. So let me ask you, if life gave you the chance to turn your deepest pain into power, would you take it? Would you stand tall and show the world that no matter how hard they tried to bury you, you were the seed? And now, it was your time to grow? The closing arguments felt like the final blow in a heavyweight fight. My lawyer stood with fire in his eyes. This is not just about stolen money. This is about a stolen life. 5 years. 5 years of wrongful imprisonment, humiliation, and pain, caused by a man who shared her blood. The jury couldn't even look at my brother anymore. Their faces were filled with disbelief and disgust. Then it was his lawyer's turn. Desperate, pathetic, throwing around excuses like confetti at a funeral. It was all a misunderstanding. They had business conflicts, but the more he spoke, the more he dug the grave deeper. Because the evidence wasn't just solid, it was suffocating. There was nowhere left to hide. As the judge dismissed the jury to deliberate, my heart pounded like a war drum. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like days. I kept glancing at the door, waiting, wondering, hoping. But you know what's funny? I wasn't scared. Not anymore. Because no matter what the jury decided, I had already won. I survived. I fought back. I stood tall. Then, the door opened. 12 faces walked back in. The foreman stood up, holding the paper that would decide everything. My breath caught. My palms sweated. The entire room leaned forward, holding their collective breath. This was it. Everything I had endured came down to this moment. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been seconds away from hearing the words that could either free you or crush you? That electric silence. That unbearable pause. When time itself stops breathing? Because that's exactly where I stood as the foreman handed the verdict to the judge. The judge unfolded the paper. His eyes scanned it. His lips pressed tight. Then, we, the jury, find the defendant liable on all counts. The courtroom exploded. Some gasped, some cheered. And me? I didn't move. I stood frozen. As the weight of those words hit me like a tidal wave, I won. I actually won. The damages were astronomical. Financial compensation for wrongful imprisonment, emotional distress, loss of reputation, punitive damages for malicious intent, numbers that would ruin him, numbers that would follow him for the rest of his miserable life. But you know what? It was never about the money. It was about reclaiming my name, my dignity, my soul. I glanced at him, my brother, my betrayer, sitting there, pale, mouth open, hands shaking, watching his entire life collapse like a house of cards. I thought, maybe I'd feel pity. Maybe some tiny part of me would mourn the brother I thought I had. But no, nothing. Just emptiness. Because the person I loved never existed. As I walked out of that courtroom, head high, free, victorious, the crowd parted. Reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved in my face. How does it feel? What will you do next? I smiled. A real smile. The first real one in years. And I whispered to myself, I survived hell. Now I build heaven. So let me ask you, have you ever realized that sometimes the worst thing someone can do to you is exactly what you needed to become who you were always meant to be? Because that's what I learned. I wasn't just a survivor. I was a warrior. And my story was far from over. The news spread like wildfire. My face was everywhere. Headlines screamed, "Woman wrongfully jailed sues brother and wins." TV interviews, podcasts, articles. Everyone wanted to hear how a woman destroyed by her own blood managed to rise, fight, and win. But behind the cameras, I was still processing it, still learning how to breathe, as a free woman with a cleared name. But freedom comes with echoes. Every time I walked past someone whispering, "That's her," I was reminded my story was no longer just mine. It belonged to every person who'd been silenced, every person who was told, "Stay quiet." It's family. Every person who ever wondered if they'd survive being betrayed by the ones they loved the most. One afternoon, as I sat in a coffee shop, a young woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "I watched your trial. I'm fighting my own battle. Your story gave me courage." In that moment, I realized something. My pain had turned into purpose. My suffering wasn't wasted. It became a lighthouse for others, drowning in their own storms. Meanwhile, my brother lost everything. His business collapsed. Friends vanished. His perfect image shattered beyond repair. But the final blow? The criminal investigation. Because the lawsuit wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The DA opened a case for perjury, fraud, and obstruction of justice. And this time, he wouldn't be lying his way out. So let me ask you, have you ever thought about how life has a strange way of balancing the scales? How sometimes the universe lets the snake bite, but only so it can eventually choke on its own venom? Because watching his downfall was proof that karma doesn't miss. Months later, I stood in another courtroom. This time, watching him in handcuffs, orange jumpsuit, shackled like the criminal he always was, the same way I once stood. But this time the roles were reversed. As the judge read his sentence, I felt nothing but peace. Not revenge, not anger, just peace. Because justice had finally come full circle. I walked out of that building, not as the broken woman who once cried in a prison cell, but as someone reborn, stronger, wiser, untouchable. And you know what? I realized the prison wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. The worst thing would have been never discovering who I really was. Today, I help others fight their battles. I speak at conferences. I work with organizations that defend the wrongfully convicted. I tell my story, not for pity, but for power. Because if my scars can light the way for someone else, then every tear I ever cried was worth it. People ask me all the time, "Do you hate him?" And my answer? No, I don't hate him. Because hate still gives him space in my life. And trust me, he doesn't deserve even that. I've let go. I've moved on. And the freedom that comes from that is the sweetest victory of all. So let me leave you with this. If someone ever tries to destroy you, remember, they might succeed in burying you, but they'll forget. You're a seed. And one day, you'll grow back, stronger, louder, and unstoppable, just like I did.